South Park has never been a show that holds back. Every episode, every character, every moment pushes boundaries that most shows wouldn't even touch. But buried underneath all that crude humor and shocking content are some genuinely disturbing death scenes that still haunt viewers years later. That's why today, I'm breaking down the 8 most painful and brutal deaths in South Park history and exactly what made them so horrifying. Starting with a beloved character who suffered one of the most unnecessary send-offs in television history, Chef's death. Chef was one of the most reliable characters in South Park for 8 straight seasons. The guy who gave advice, made the kids laugh, and honestly just tried to help everyone around him. Then Isaac Hayes left the show over a Scientology controversy. And the creators decided to send Chef off in the most brutal way imaginable. Here's what happened. Chef returns to South Park after joining something called the Super Adventure Club, and immediately the boys notice he's acting wrong. He's been brainwashed by this cult into saying disturbing things to children. The boys actually try to save him. They convince him to leave the club and come back to town. For a moment, it looks like it's going to work. But then the club leader reminds Chef why he joined in the first place, and Chef turns back. He apologizes to the boys and starts walking back across a rope bridge toward the compound. That's when everything goes wrong. Lightning strikes the bridge. Chef catches fire. The bridge collapses and he falls, still burning, hitting jagged rocks on the way down. He lands impaled on a tree branch. Or a mountain lion appears and tries to rip his arm off. The cult members try shooting the lion but miss and hit Chef repeatedly instead. Then a grizzly bear shows up and fights the mountain lion for Chef's body. Both animals maul him while he's still stuck on that branch. The whole sequence lasts nearly a minute, and the worst part is that Chef is conscious through most of it, screaming in agony as each new horror unfolds. By the time it's over, there's barely anything left of him. The town holds a funeral, with just his spatula in the coffin, because they couldn't recover his body. The creators later resurrected him as Darth Chef, a Scientology zombie with a Vader suit and a glowing spatula. But even that felt like just another insult on top of the most unnecessarily violent character death the show had ever done. At least Chef went out fighting, unlike the next 2 people on this list, who never even saw it coming. The Tenorman parents. Scott. Tenorman Must Die is considered one of the greatest South Park episodes ever made. It's also home to one of the most disturbing acts of revenge in television history, and it starts with $16. Scott Tenorman, a 9th grader, tricks Cartman into buying his pubic hair for $16.12. Cartman tries multiple times to get his money back, but Scott outsmarts him at every turn. Scott even makes Cartman dance around like a pig on video, then shows it to the entire town. Scott burns the $16 right in front of Cartman just to make him suffer. That's when Cartman snaps and creates the most elaborate revenge plan the show had ever seen. Cartman invites Scott to a chili cook-off. He tells Stan and Kyle a fake plan about training a pony to bite off Scott's genitals, knowing they'll warn Scott about it. Scott hears the warning and immediately tells his parents about a starving pony on Farmer Denkins' property. His parents, being decent people, drive out that night to rescue the animal. But Cartman had already told Denkins that violent pony killers were in the area. When Scott's parents showed up on his property, Denkins shot them both dead on sight for trespassing. While Denkins gave his report to the police, Cartman stole both bodies. He spent the entire night with a hacksaw, chopping them into pieces. He mixed their remains into chili and served it to Scott at the cook-off the next day. Scott eats the chili. Cartman reveals what he did. And Scott reaches into the bowl and pulls out his mother's finger with her wedding ring still attached. He realizes he just ate his own parents. He vomits. He starts sobbing. That's when Radiohead walks in. Cartman had invited them, telling them Scott was dying of cancer. They see Scott crying and mock him for being a crybaby. They call him uncool and leave. Cartman then walks over and licks the tears off Scott's face, calling them the tears of unfathomable sadness. The episode ends with Stan and Kyle agreeing to never piss off Cartman again. And they were right to be scared, because years later in the episode 201, it's revealed that Scott's father Jack Tenorman was actually Cartman's biological dad, meaning Cartman killed his own father, chopped him up, cooked him into chili, and ate him. Even Cartman didn't know this at the time. Bud, if you think feeding someone their parents is dark, wait until you hear about the time a doctor replaced a kid's heart with a potato. Kenny's exploding heart. The South Park movie gave us one of Kenny's most iconic deaths, and it starts with an argument about whether farts are flammable. Kenny and Cartman just watched the new Terrence and Phillip movie. There's a scene where someone lights their flatulence on fire. Kenny insists it's real and decides to prove it. He pulls out a lighter, positions himself, strikes the match, and immediately goes up in flames. The fire engulfs his entire body. He's screaming. The boys rush him to the hospital where Dr. Gouache takes him into surgery. This is where things go from bad to horrifying. The doctor removes Kenny's organs and puts them in the microwave to heat them up. But someone had left a baked potato in there. When the doctor opens the microwave, he grabs the potato by mistake and surgically implants it into Kenny's chest where his heart should be. Kenny wakes up on the operating table. The doctor leans over and says they accidentally replaced his heart with a baked potato, and he has about 3 seconds to live. Kenny barely has time to process this before the potato explodes inside his chest cavity, destroying what's left of his body from the inside out. The scene is played for laughs, but think about what Kenny experienced. First, the agony of burning alive, then false hope as doctors try to save him, then the crushing realization that he's about to die from the most absurd medical malpractice imaginable. Then 3 seconds of pure terror before his chest detonates. This death was so brutal that it became the catalyst for the entire rest of the movie. Kenny's soul goes straight to hell, where he befriends Satan and eventually sacrifices himself to save everyone on Earth. The potato death wasn't just shocking. It fundamentally changed Kenny's role from disposable joke character to someone capable of genuine heroism. But even that pales in comparison to the time Kenny died because he was literally too poor and hungry to recognize what he was eating. Kenny's antacid explosion. Kenny's death in Chef Goes. Nanners happens during a subplot about South Park's racist flag, but nobody remembers the flag controversy. Everyone remembers Kenny exploding like a human balloon. The setup is simple. Kenny is at Kyle's house. He's poor. He's starving. The McCormick family barely has food. Kenny sees a large bowl of what he thinks are mints sitting on the table. To a kid who only eats Pop-Tarts, a whole bowl of free mints must seem like a miracle. Kyle notices Kenny eating them and warns him to stop. Those aren't mints. They're his dad's antacid tablets. Kenny ignores the warning and eats the entire bowl. 60 tablets. Then Kenny drinks water. The chemical reaction starts immediately. Foam begins leaking from Kenny's eyes. More foam pours from his mouth. His body starts swelling. Slowly at first, then faster. His arms balloon out. His torso expands. He keeps growing and growing like Violet Beauregard from Willy Wonka. Except this isn't a candy factory and there's no saving him. Kenny knows what's happening. You can see it in his eyes. He feels the pressure building inside him with nowhere to go. The pain must be excruciating as his body stretches beyond what skin and bone can handle. And then he explodes. Body parts fly everywhere. Blood and foam coat the walls. Chunks of Kenny are scattered across the room. And everyone just laughs. His friends, the other kids, even Kyle who tried to warn him. They all find it hilarious. Nobody calls for help. Nobody shows concern. They just laugh at the poor kid who ate antacids because he was too hungry to think straight. This death stands out because of how avoidable it was and how callous everyone's reaction is. Kenny died because poverty and hunger clouded his judgment, and his reward was becoming a joke that his own friends found funny. At least most of Kenny's deaths are quick, unlike the next one, which took days of suffering. On Kenny's terminal illness, Season 5's finale. Kenny dies broke the show's formula in the most heartbreaking way possible. For the first time, Kenny wasn't killed by some random accident. He got sick, and he stayed sick, and everyone knew he was going to die. Kenny is diagnosed with a terminal muscular dystrophy. There's no cure, no miracle recovery, just a slow decline in a hospital bed surrounded by machines that can't save him. The episode shows Kenny deteriorating over several days while his friends try to cope with losing him for real. Kyle visits regularly and tries to stay positive. He brings Kenny gifts and talks to him about normal stuff, desperately pretending everything will be okay. Cartman, being Cartman, he tries to use Kenny's terminal illness to lobby Congress for stem cell research funding so he can build a Shakey's Pizza franchise. It's horrible and completely in character, but Stan can't handle it. He tries to visit Kenny multiple times and can't bring himself to go inside the hospital room. The guilt eats at him. His best friend is dying and Stan is too scared and overwhelmed to say goodbye. When he finally works up the courage, it's too late. Kenny dies off-screen, alone in that hospital bed. The episode ends with Stan standing outside, having missed his chance. There's no joke, no reset, no Kenny appearing in the next scene like nothing happened. This death hurt because it was real. Muscular dystrophy is a real disease that causes real suffering. Kenny spent his final days trapped in a hospital, watching his body fail him, or knowing his friends were struggling with grief they weren't equipped to process. The physical pain of the disease combined with the emotional pain of a slow goodbye made this one of the most brutal deaths in the entire series, and Kenny actually stayed dead for the entire next season. The creators killed him permanently, breaking a gag they'd maintained for 5 years. The show continued without him for months before eventually bringing him back. But if you think watching Kenny waste away in a hospital was disturbing, wait until you hear about the time Michael Jackson threw a child through a ceiling. Kenny versus Michael Jackson. The Jeffersons is one of South Park's more disturbing episodes, even by their standards, and Kenny's death is the horrifying cherry on top. The boys befriend a wealthy new kid in town named Blanket, whose father is the eccentric Mr. Jefferson. Everyone immediately recognizes that Mr. Jefferson is obviously Michael Jackson, but nobody says it out loud. Mr. Jefferson is strange, childlike, disconnected from reality. The boys notice he doesn't understand boundaries or normal behavior. When they discover that Blanket's home life is troubling, they decide to help the kid escape. Their plan involves dressing Kenny up as Blanket to trick Mr. Jefferson. The boys successfully sneak Blanket out. Mr. Jefferson discovers the swap. He sees Kenny dressed as his son and, in a moment of either confusion or rage, grabs Kenny by the arms. Then he throws him, not pushes, throws, with enough force to send Kenny straight up through the solid ceiling. Numb Kenny crashes through the roof and disappears into the night sky. The impact kills him instantly. What makes this death so disturbing isn't just the violence. It's what the violence reveals. Mr. Jefferson is supposed to love Blanket, yet he's capable of killing a child with his bare hands without even thinking about it. He doesn't know his own strength. He doesn't understand the fragility of children's bodies. And the episode makes it clear this isn't the first time his warped perception has put kids in danger. Kenny was 8 years old and powerless against a fully grown adult who treated him like a rag doll. The death happens in seconds, and there's nothing Kenny or anyone else could have done to stop it. It's a dark commentary on celebrity power and child endangerment disguised as a slapstick death scene. But at least that death was quick. The next one took weeks to kill Kenny and came from the one thing he'd been waiting patiently for: Kenny's syphilis death. The Ring is an episode about purity culture and the Jonas Brothers, but it's also home to one of Kenny's most ironically painful deaths. Kenny starts dating Tammy Warner, a fifth grader with a reputation for being sexually adventurous. Kenny is thrilled. For once, something good is happening to the poor kid. Then Tammy goes to a Jonas Brothers concert and gets caught up in the purity ring movement. She decides to stay abstinent and starts wearing a ring to prove it. Kenny's dreams are crushed, but he doesn't pressure her. He respects her decision. He even gets his own purity ring and wears it to show support. Kenny waits and waits. He's patient and understanding, which is remarkable for an 8-year-old boy. The episode makes it clear that Kenny genuinely cares about Tammy and isn't just waiting for sexual favors. He wants to make her happy. Eventually, they decide together to have sex despite the purity rings. It seems like a happy ending for Kenny. He respected boundaries, waited patiently, and got to have a genuine teenage experience with someone he liked. The episode cuts to Kenny's funeral. He died of syphilis. The disease he contracted from Tammy killed him. Not instantly either. Syphilis progresses through stages. First comes the sore, then the rash. Then it spreads throughout your body, attacking your organs, your brain, your nervous system. Kenny would have spent days or weeks feeling increasingly sick, knowing something was wrong, probably too embarrassed or scared to tell anyone. The cruelty of this death is the irony. Kenny did everything right. He was respectful, patient, and genuinely kind. His reward was dying slowly from a sexually transmitted infection after finally getting the one normal teenage experience he'd been hoping for. The show played it as a dark punchline to its satire of purity culture, but the implications are horrifying when you think about what Kenny actually went through. And if you think that's brutal, our final death proves that in South Park, not even the literal devil is safe from pain. Satan's sacrifice. Man Bear Pig returns in Sons A Witches, and this time he's not just a running gag about Al Gore. He's a genuine apocalyptic threat destroying South Park. The boys discover that Man Bear Pig has demonic origins, which gives them an idea. If Man Bear Pig is from hell, maybe the ruler of hell can stop him. They summon Satan, literal Satan, the Prince of Darkness, the Lord of the Underworld. He appears and the boys beg him to fight Man Bear Pig on humanity's behalf. Satan agrees, probably because even he doesn't want Man Bear Pig running loose. The fight begins, and it becomes immediately clear that Satan is outmatched. Man Bear Pig dominates him. The beating is one-sided and brutal. Satan, who commands legions of demons and torments souls for eternity, can't land a single effective hit. Man Bear Pig tears into him. Satan's screams echo across South Park as he's beaten down again and again. Blood pours from his wounds. He's drowning in it, choking on his own blood as Man Bear Pig continues the assault. The ruler of hell is being destroyed by something even he can't control. Satan knew this might happen. He went into the fight understanding he could lose. But he tried anyway because saving humanity was worth the risk. That makes his death a genuine sacrifice, which is almost unheard of for Satan in any media. The pain he experiences isn't just physical. Satan is being humiliated. The ultimate symbol of evil and power is powerless and dying in agony in front of everyone. His screams aren't just pain, they're despair. And when Man-Bear-Pig finally leaves him drowning in his own blood, Satan doesn't die heroically. He just suffers. The episode treats it with unusual gravity for South Park. Satan's sacrifice fails. Man-Bear-Pig remains unstoppable, but Satan tried anyway, making his death one of the few genuinely tragic moments in a show built on dark comedy. Even the devil deserves better than drowning in his own blood while the thing he tried to stop continues terrorizing the world. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.